Wait, because what happened next isn't a spooky story. A taxi driver swore he hit a man on a foggy bypass, then found no body, no damage, nothing. And the passenger reappeared beside the car, asking calmly to be taken home. And in the second story, a child played with 5 other kids on a city playground, except her father saw her completely alone, and the other children made no sound at all. If you want the full twist, stay with me. Like, subscribe, and share. What city are you watching from? Comment below. Hey, welcome back. It's Miles here. My voice is a bit rough tonight, but I didn't want to leave you with nothing. And I want to do something different. Instead of one long story, we're doing 2 shorter ones. The kind that hit fast, then linger for years. After each story, I'll walk through what it might mean from a local folklore angle. Not to prove anything, just to see what hides under the surface. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's start. The first story came from a retired motorway officer. I'll call him Graham. Graham spent most of his career dealing with wrecks, drunk drivers, and people who thought speed was a personality trait. Strange calls happened sometimes. Usually you could explain them: fatigue, stress, reflection. But one incident never left him. It happened back in the late 90s after a long shift on a stretch of road locals still avoid at night. Graham and his partner were heading back to the station near Bristol. It was late, somewhere around 3:30 a.m. They were on the Ravensmere Bypass, a fast road that cuts through open land and fog pockets. The lanes were mostly empty, just the engine hum and the rhythm of streetlights sliding past. Graham sat in the passenger seat, exhausted, staring into the dark road ahead, thinking only about clocking out and getting home. That's when they saw a taxi pulled over on the shoulder. Not neatly, crooked, angled toward the barrier like the driver had swerved onto the hard shoulder in a hurry. The hazard lights blinked orange into the fog, and the driver wasn't sitting inside. He was outside, pacing fast around his own car, peering into the windows, then circling again like he'd lost something important. On a road like that, at that hour, stopping like that was how you caused a pileup. Graham's partner pulled in behind the taxi and lit up the scene with the patrol car's lights. Graham stepped out and walked toward the driver. The man looked up, saw the uniforms, and his whole body changed. Relief hit his face like a wave. Graham called out, "What's going on? You can't park here. Are you hurt? Is there an emergency?" The driver nodded too quickly, words stumbling over each other. He looked terrified, but not in the normal way. He told them he'd picked up a passenger just before entering the bypass, an older man, quiet, wearing a gray outfit. In his hand, he carried an old wooden basket, the kind you barely see anymore. The passenger didn't chat. He just gave a destination and sat silently in the back. The driver drove on like normal. Then, out of nowhere, he saw someone standing in the middle of the road ahead, on a motorway, at that hour. At first, the driver thought his eyes were lying, but as the headlights hit the figure, his blood went cold. The person standing on the road looked exactly like the passenger in his back seat. Same gray outfit, same wooden basket. The driver couldn't just slam brakes on a high-speed road, but panic doesn't do math. He stomped the brake and swerved. He felt the impact. He heard the sickening thud of body on metal. Then he yanked the wheel and stopped on the shoulder. For a second, he just sat there, frozen, heart pounding, mind screaming, "I killed someone!" Then he remembered the passenger. He glanced at the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty. No door had opened. No shadow moved. The old man was gone. The driver threw open his door and ran behind the taxi, expecting to find a body on the road. Nothing. He checked the bushes. He checked the barrier. He dropped to his knees and looked under the car. Nothing. No dent, no blood, no torn fabric, just long black skid marks burned into the asphalt, proof of his desperate braking. He searched again, hands on the ground, eyes wide, like he could force the explanation to appear. Then he stood up, and the old man was there, standing right beside the taxi, calm as a statue, gray outfit faint in the hazard lights, basket hanging from one hand, looking down at the driver as if nothing unusual had happened.
The driver said the old man spoke politely. "Please," the old man said, "take me to Greenwick Hamlet. I want to go home." The driver screamed and stumbled back. His heartbeat drowned out the wind. He blinked, and the old man was gone. Just gone. The driver spun in circles, searching the road, the bushes, the barrier, the darkness. And right then, Graham and his partner had pulled up behind him. The driver looked at Graham like he'd been saved from drowning.
Graham listened without laughing, because he knew the Ravensmere bypass. He knew what people said about it. He told the driver, "Go home. You've had a bad night. Don't stop here again." The driver begged them to check the road, check the bushes, check the taxi. Graham did. There was nothing to check. No body, no trace, just the skid marks and a man shaking like he'd touched something he wasn't meant to touch. Now, I'm going to ask you what I asked myself. What do you think happened there? Was it a stress hallucination, a trick of fog and fatigue, or was it something else? Something that used the road like a stage? Because here's the detail that won't leave my mind. The old man didn't scream. He didn't accuse. He didn't react to being hit. He just repeated one simple desire: take me home. Like the request mattered more than the rules of reality. That bypass has a reputation for a reason. In the 80s and 90s, that stretch saw brutal crashes, especially when fog rolled in and turned headlights into white walls. People called it the widow's ribbon. Some sections had sharp bends and bad gradients. Multi-car pileups meant headlines. Later, the road was improved. Wider lanes, better lighting, better barriers, safer on paper. But stories didn't stop. Night drivers still report figures near the shoulder. A man with a basket, a woman with no face, a hitchhiker who appears twice.
So what's the folklore read on it? In old local belief, certain roads become heavy when enough grief collects there. Not because asphalt is cursed, but because memory sticks. Some hauntings are intelligent. They see you, they speak to you. Others are echoes, a loop, a moment replaying in the same place like a recording that won't erase. The old man asking to go home feels like both. He speaks, so there's awareness, but he repeats, like the request is trapped in the groove.
There's an idea you'll hear in rural stories. The dead try to finish what they started. Not revenge, not terror, just completion. In some villages, families used to fight hard to bring bodies home because home soil mattered. If someone died far from home, the spirit was said to wander, unsettled, until it returned. That's the old fear behind roadside hitchhiker tales. Not that a ghost wants you, that a ghost wants direction. And in giving direction, you step into the story. If this was an echo haunting, the driver didn't hit a man, he hit a memory, a last moment burned into the road by violence. The impact was his brain reacting to a shape in fog and the terror of what it meant. But if it was an intelligent haunting, then the old man wasn't just replaying. He was trying to get someone to carry him to the last place that still feels like his name. That's why he appears twice, once to enter the taxi, once to stand beside it and ask again. And the basket matters. Old wooden baskets aren't just props. They're rural life. They're old markets. They're a person from a different era carrying something that belonged to his daily routine. In stories like this, objects show what the spirit still clings to. Not gold, not weapons, a basket, the ordinary. That's the saddest kind of haunting. It's not theatrical, it's domestic. It says, I was going somewhere simple, and the road decided otherwise. All right, that's story 1. Now we move to story 2. This one came from a viewer. I'll call her Elise. Elise grew up in Rotterdam before moving away later in life. But one childhood memory stayed sharp, the kind that never fades no matter how much time passes. She was 7 or 8. Her family lived in an apartment directly above a small playground. For a kid that age, it felt like winning the world. Every day after school, Elise would rush downstairs to play until dinner. One evening, she lost track of time. She was playing with about 5 other kids, all around her age. She hadn't met them before, but kids came and went all the time, so it didn't feel strange. They ran, climbed, chased each other around the equipment as the sky darkened. Streetlights flickered on one by one. Elise didn't notice. She was too happy.
Eventually, her father came down to fetch her. Elise spotted him across the playground and felt that instant shock. Oh no, it's late. She waved goodbye to the other kids and ran over, apologizing. Her dad looked down at her, then looked around the playground with confusion. Elise, he said, why are you out here by yourself? It's late. Come on, dinner's ready. Your mom's waiting. Elise blinked. By myself? She asked, and turned her head toward the playground.
The 5 kids were still there. She could see them under the dim streetlights, still running and playing. She could see their arms swinging, their heads turning, their bodies moving like normal children. She pointed. They're right there, she said. Her dad looked where she pointed and didn't react. He just took her hand and guided her toward the building lobby. Elise kept looking back, sure he was about to notice, but he didn't. He never even slowed down. Years later, when Elise was older, she asked her dad about that night. He didn't hesitate. There were no other children, he said. You were alone. You were laughing and running, talking to yourself like you were playing a game. Elise felt cold hearing that, because she remembered their faces, their clothes, the way they moved in a group, like friends who had always known each other. And then she remembered the detail she hadn't thought mattered until her dad's words made it matter. They made no sound. Elise could hear her own footsteps clearly, loud on pavement when she ran. But the other kids, nothing. No footfalls, no scuff of shoes, no thump when they jumped off the climbing frame. They looked real, but they didn't weigh anything. Silence followed them like a rule. Elise told me she didn't feel fear that night. She felt normal. That's what unsettled her later. If her father hadn't said anything, she might never have questioned it at all. So, what do I think happened to Elise? In European folklore, there's a concept called a thin place, a spot where the boundary between worlds feels thinner than it should. Sometimes it's an old lane,
Sometimes it's a field. Sometimes it's a playground built over ground with a history nobody remembers. Children, especially young ones, are said to notice thin places more easily, not because they're magical, but because they haven't learned the same filters adults live inside.
And the silence is the key. In folk belief, sound is weight. Sound is proof of contact. Movement without sound suggests something that looks physical but isn't fully anchored in the physical. It doesn't automatically mean danger. Elise felt no threat. The kids didn't lure her away. They didn't speak in a way that felt wrong. They just played. If this was an overlap, it may have been brief and harmless, like two layers of reality touching for a moment under streetlights.
There's another possibility too: memory. Kids confuse time, adults misread. But the father's account and Elise's account don't match in a way that feels like simple confusion. He saw a girl alone. She saw a group. Both can be true if they were standing in the same place but not perceiving the same layer. That's the oldest kind of unsettling story. Not a monster, not a scream, just the quiet idea that the world has more than one channel, and sometimes you accidentally tune to the wrong one.
Elise told me something else. After that night, nothing like it happened again. She grew older, and the playground became ordinary. That matches another old idea: sensitivity fades. Most children lose whatever openness they had. Their world becomes heavier, more fixed. The extra layer stops leaking through. Adults become blind to it, not because it's impossible, but because adulthood is a kind of lock. It keeps you safe, but it also keeps you from seeing what you once saw without effort.
So those are the two stories. A taxi driver on a foggy bypass nearly losing his mind over a polite old man who wanted to go home, and a child in a city playground laughing with silent friends nobody else could see. Two different settings, same feeling. A brief overlap, a moment that doesn't fit. If you've ever experienced something like that, you know what the real horror is. It's not that it happened, it's that you can't prove it, even to yourself.
And now, I'll leave you with one question. Not, do you believe in ghosts? That's too easy. Here's the better question. If reality can glitch for one person and not another, what decides who sees it? Fatigue, timing, place, or something in you that shifts without warning? If you drive late at night, pay attention to roads with reputations. If your kid says they're playing with someone you can't see, don't laugh too quickly. Just listen.
Years later, Elise asked her father about that night again. She expected him to laugh, or to admit he'd simply missed the other kids in the dark. He didn't. He looked her straight in the eye and said, "There were no other children. You were alone. You were laughing and running around by yourself." Elise told me her stomach dropped when he said it, because she remembered them clearly. Their faces, their clothes, the way they moved as a group. And then she remembered the details she ignored at the time. They made no sound. Elise could hear her own footsteps hitting the pavement when she ran. Heavy, real. But the other kids had no footfalls at all. No scuffs, no thumps when they jumped off the play structure, just silent movement under streetlights, like a film playing with the volume turned off. She said nothing else about them felt strange. They didn't look sick. They didn't lure her away. They didn't frighten her. That's what makes it unsettling. If her father hadn't said anything, she might have never questioned it.
So, what do you think happened? Was it childhood imagination filling in the dark with friendly shapes? Or was it something else? Something that shared the same space for a few minutes and then slipped away when the night changed? I keep coming back to the silence. Silence is not a small detail. Silence is the kind of detail that turns a normal story into a wrong one. Because a group of kids can be loud without trying. Even when they whisper, they still make sound. Shoes still hit ground, bodies still have weight.
In old Eastern folk belief, sound is linked to yang energy. It is the proof that something has density, pressure, contact with the world. Movement with no sound is seen as yin dominant, meaning a presence that looks solid but isn't fully anchored in physical reality. There's a saying that goes something like this: form without sound is often not human. It doesn't mean evil, it means different. It means you might be looking at something that can be seen but not fully touched by the same rules you live under.
And here's why I don't think those children were predatory. Elise felt no fear, not even a flicker. She wasn't tempted to follow them away from home. She wasn't drawn into a corner or led toward a gate. They just played. The vibe was ordinary, almost sweet. If it was a spirit encounter, it felt more like benign company than a trap. Like a brief overlap where two groups of children, separated by something bigger than time, shared the same playground for a while and didn't realize they weren't supposed to. There's another idea you hear a lot. Kids can perceive things adults can't. Not because kids are smarter, but because they're less sealed shut. In some traditions, they call it the open eye, the sense that hasn't closed yet. Adults, on the other hand, carry stronger yang in the simplest way. Their bodies and minds are more fixed, more locked into one channel. So a child might see the extra layer and treat it as normal, while the adult stands in the same spot and sees nothing at all. If that's true, then Elisa's dad wasn't lying. He saw what his reality allowed him to see. His daughter alone in the dark, laughing and running like kids do. Elise saw what her reality allowed her to see. A group of playmates who looked normal but didn't make sound. Two truths in one place. And if it was a brief overlap, it also explains why it never happened again. The channel drifted back into alignment. The playground became just a playground. Elise grew older. The openness faded the way it usually does.
Most people grow out of that sensitivity. The world becomes heavier, more consistent. That's the trade. You gain stability, you lose access. Some people keep a sliver of it, but most don't. And that's why adults react the way they do when kids say strange things. Adults want to correct. Adults want to explain. Adults want to laugh it off. But if you ever hear a child say, "I'm playing with someone," and you see nobody there, don't rush to mock it. Ask calm questions. Listen to the details, especially the details that don't feel like imagination. Because imagination is loud. Imagination is messy. Imagination changes shape every time you ask about it. But stories like Elise's carry a fixed spine. Same number of kids, same memory of the lights, same silence, same feeling that nothing was wrong until an adult introduced the idea that it was wrong. That's the part that makes me pause. The fear wasn't in the moment. The fear was in the retroactive collision between two realities that refuse to match. And once your brain learns that mismatch is possible, you can't unlearn it. Now put both stories side by side. A road where someone appears twice, like a loop that won't end.
A playground where silent children play for a while, then vanish into normal night. Different settings, same sensation. Reality behaving like it has layers, like it can stutter, like some places collect something and don't release it easily. You don't need to call it paranormal if that word makes you roll your eyes. Call it overlap. Call it perception. Call it the mind doing strange math under certain conditions. But don't call it nothing.
And here's the part I want you to keep in your pocket. If an experience doesn't ask for anything, it may not be hostile. The taxi figure didn't threaten, he requested. The playground kids didn't lure, they played. That doesn't make it safe in every case, but it changes the tone. It suggests not every strange thing is hunting you. Some things might just be stuck. Some might be repeating. Some might be passing through a moment the way you pass through fog, leaving you with a memory that feels impossible in daylight.
If you drive late at night, pay attention to roads with reputations. Not because the road is cursed, but because roads collect patterns. They collect tragedy. They collect the kind of repeating story people tell each other to stay awake behind the wheel. And if you have a child who talks about people you can't see, don't panic and don't feed it either. Stay steady. Ask what they look like. Ask what they say. Ask how it feels. Fear is loud. Calm is clarity. If something is truly wrong, clarity helps you act.
I'll end with this. The scariest thing isn't a monster with teeth. The scariest thing is a moment where you realize you might not be seeing the same world as the person standing next to you. Because then you understand how fragile certainty really is. And certainty is what most of us rely on to sleep, to drive, to raise kids, to walk home at night. These stories don't steal your life. They steal your confidence in the rules. And once the rules feel negotiable, your mind keeps searching for the next crack.
So tonight, if you're listening in bed, let the dark stay just the dark. Let the wind be only wind. And if you ever find yourself on a quiet road with fog so thick it turns headlights into a wall, don't stop unless you have to. Keep moving. Keep your focus. If you ever hear laughter outside your window and you see an empty playground under streetlights, don't assume you're crazy. Assume the world is bigger than your certainty, and you just caught a glimpse of a seam. That's the end of tonight's episode. Thanks for staying with me all the way through. I'll see you again next time. Until then, stay safe. Good night.